The Chicago skyline glittered like a jagged crown against the night sky, its towering spires indifferent to the tragedy unfolding on the roof of the Willis Tower. Claire Thompson, her heart a furnace of rage and grief, gripped Sarah's wrist with a force that could shatter bone. The wind howled, tugging at their clothes as if urging them toward the edge. Below, the city pulsed with life cars crawling like ants, lights flickering in a rhythm that mocked the chaos above. Claire's eyes, red-rimmed and blazing, locked onto Sarah's, who stood defiant despite the terror in her gaze. "You took everything from me," Claire hissed, her voice trembling with the weight of a mother's loss. "My daughter, my husband, my trust. You'll pay for everything." Sarah's lips parted, a protest forming, but Claire didn't wait. With a scream that tore through the night, she yanked Sarah forward, and they plummeted together, a tangled mass of betrayal and vengeance, hurtling toward the unforgiving pavement below. As the ground rushed up, Claire's mind burned with a single thought. If there were another life, she'd never let Sarah climb the social ladder again. She'd tear down every rung, crush every opportunity, and ensure Sarah remained in the dust where she belonged. The impact was imminent, the world blurring into a kaleidoscope of lights and shadows. But just as death's cold fingers closed around her, a jarring voice pierced the void, shrill, excited, and achingly familiar. "Claire, you won't believe this. The jewelry design competition just announced the prizes." Claire's eyes snapped open, her body jerking as if jolted by lightning. She was no longer falling. Instead, she sat on a creaky dorm bed at Northwestern University, the air thick with the scent of cheap coffee and lavender air freshener. Before her stood Sarah, her face alight with a grin that once warmed Claire's heart but now twisted it like a knife. Sarah's hands gripped Claire's shoulders, shaking her gently, her voice bubbling with news about the Larson Jewelers competition. "If I place in the top 3, I get a direct offer from them. Can you imagine? Me at Larson Jewelers?" Her eyes sparkled, but to Claire they gleamed with deceit, a facade hiding the monster within. Claire's breath caught her mind reeling. The dorm's faded posters, the cluttered desk with her old sketchbooks, and the mirror reflecting her younger, unscarred face were all real. She was back, reborn to her college days, years before the betrayal shattered her life. Joy surged through her, a fleeting spark that illuminated the dark corners of her soul. She was alive with a chance to rewrite her story, to protect her future daughter Lily, and to exact justice. But the spark was quickly smothered by a tidal wave of hatred, raw and consuming, as memories of Sarah's treachery flooded back, her affair with Ethan, the kidnapping of Lily, the cold justification for her crimes. Claire's hands trembled, itching to wrap around Sarah's throat to end her here and now. But no, that was too quick, too merciful. Sarah deserved a slower, more devastating fall. Suppressing the urge, Claire forced her lips into a smile, the effort like swallowing broken glass. "That's amazing, Sarah," she said, her voice steady despite the storm within. "You're going to shine." Her words dripped with false warmth, a mask honed by years of love now twisted into a weapon. Sarah, oblivious, beamed wider, her pride barely concealed. Claire's mind raced, already weaving the threads of a plan. She'd attend the competition, yes, but not to cheer Sarah's moment of glory would be her first step toward ruin. As Sarah chattered about her designs, Claire's gaze drifted to a laptop on her desk, open to a YouTube channel featuring student success stories. An idea sparked. "Hey, Sarah," she interrupted, her tone light but calculated. "You should post about your journey on that channel. It's got a substantial following, perfect for inspiring others. People would love to hear how you're breaking barriers." She paused, her smile sly. "And who knows, maybe they'll like, comment, and subscribe to follow your rise. You're a story worth sharing." Sarah laughed, flattered, unaware that Claire was already scripting her downfall, which would be broadcast far wider than any YouTube video. Claire's heart, though, wasn't as cold as she wished. Beneath the hatred, a flicker of doubt lingered. Could she become the monster Sarah was? Could she destroy without losing herself? She pushed the thought aside, focusing on Lily, the daughter she hadn't yet met in this timeline, but whose loss haunted her every breath. Protecting Lily, avenging her, this was Claire's purpose now. She'd rewrite this story not just for revenge, but to ensure her daughter's safety, even if it meant staining her soul. As Sarah left to prepare for the competition, Claire stood her reflection in the mirror, a stranger's young but hardened, ready to wage war. The Northwestern campus buzzed with early autumn energy, leaves crunching underfoot as students hurried to classes. Claire walked toward the lecture hall, her mind a battlefield of memories and plans. Sarah had invited her to the Larson Jewelers competition finals, a glittering event held at the Chicago Cultural Center, where industry titans would judge Sarah's designs. Claire had been there in her previous life, clapping as Sarah took first place, her heart swelling with pride for her friend. Now the memory was a bitter pill tainted by the knowledge of Sarah's true nature. Claire's steps quickened, her jaw tight. This time Sarah's victory would be her undoing. Sarah was a whirlwind of nervous excitement in their shared dorm, her desk cluttered with sketches of gemstone necklaces and earrings. She wore a faded sweater, her hair pulled into a messy bun, playing the part of the humble, hard-working student. "Claire, I'm freaking out," she said, turning to Claire with wide, earnest eyes. "What if I choke? This is my shot to escape everything: my dad's drinking, my mom's neglect, Tommy's debts." Her voice cracked, and she reached for Claire's hand, squeezing it. "You're my rock. You know that I want you there at the finals to see me finally make something of myself." Claire's skin crawled at the touch, but didn't pull away. Sarah's words, so sincere on the surface, were a performance Claire now recognized, a carefully crafted act to keep her close, dependent, and valuable. In her past life, Claire had fallen for it, funding Sarah's education, anonymously pulling strings to get her noticed by Larson Jewelers, even saving her from her family's clutches. Sarah had called her a guardian angel, but repaid her with betrayal, seducing Ethan, orchestrating Lily's kidnapping, and dismissing her daughter's death with chilling cruelty. The memory of Sarah's words, "Lily was suffering anyway," ignited a fire in Claire's chest, but she kept her face soft, her eyes warm. "Of course I'll be there," Claire said, her smile a perfect imitation of their old friendship. "I wouldn't miss your big moment." Sarah's face lit up, but Claire caught the flicker of pride in her eyes, a hint of the arrogance that would surface once success was hers. Claire's mind churned with strategy. She'd let Sarah climb just high enough to feel the fall. The competition was the perfect stage, public, prestigious, and ripe for sabotage. Claire had already contacted a shady technician at the venue, slipping him a wad of cash to ensure Sarah's USB drive would be swapped with one containing compromising photos. The details were meticulous. The images, faked to implicate Sarah and her brother Tommy, were crafted by a discreet forger Claire had found through a Chicago underworld contact. It was a risk, but Claire's rage justified the cost. As Sarah rambled about her design theme, forbidden love, like something out of a Greek tragedy, Claire's thoughts drifted to Ethan. In this timeline, he was still the devoted husband, unaware of his future betrayal. But Claire's reborn memories painted him as a coward, a man who'd stood by as Sarah destroyed their daughter. Had he been reborn too, like Sarah would later claim? The possibility gnawed at her, stirring a mix of dread and determination. If Ethan were reborn, she'd need to be sharper, crueler. She'd already begun manipulating him, planting the seed of a financial crisis at Larson Jewelers to drain his resources and bind him to her plan. His love for her was her leverage, but it also pricked at her heart, a reminder of the man she'd once adored, now a target of her vengeance. Claire's gaze fell on a photo pinned to the dorm wall, her and Sarah arms around each other, laughing at a campus festival. The image stung, a relic of a friendship that had been her anchor. Part of her ached to reclaim that bond, to believe Sarah could be redeemed. But the weight of Lily's loss crushed that hope. Claire had enrolled Lily, now a toddler in this timeline, in a secure Chicago boarding school with top-tier security, a precaution to protect her from any threat. She'd never let Sarah near her daughter again. The thought steadied her, grounding her in her mission. Sarah, oblivious to Claire's inner turmoil, hugged her tightly. "You're my best friend, Claire. I don't know what I'd do without you." The words were a dagger, twisting deeper with every syllable. Claire returned the hug, her embrace cold and calculated. "You'll see just how much you need me," she murmured, too low for Sarah to hear. As Sarah pulled away, humming happily, Claire's eyes narrowed. The cultural center would be Sarah's stage, but not for triumph. Claire would ensure the spotlight burned her to ashes. The Northwestern University campus sprawled under a crisp Chicago morning, its Gothic buildings casting long shadows across the quad. Claire Thompson sat on a bench near Lake Michigan, the water's gentle lapping, a stark contrast to the turmoil within her. She clutched a steaming coffee, its warmth grounding her as memories of her past life clawed at her mind. Sarah, her so-called best friend, had been a project of pity, a charity case Claire had nurtured out of kindness. Now that kindness was a wound festering with betrayal. Claire's gaze hardened as she watched students bustle past, their laughter a reminder of the innocence she'd lost. She was reborn, but the weight of her past life, her daughter Lily's death, Ethan's infidelity, Sarah's treachery, threatened to crush her. Yet beneath the rage, a flicker of doubt lingered. Was she becoming the monster she despised? Sarah's story had tugged at Claire's heart years ago. They'd met during first-year orientation when Sarah, a scholarship student from a rough South Side neighborhood, stood trembling as her drunken father and shrill mother demanded money outside the dorms. Claire, raised in a comfortable Evanston home, had stepped in, diffusing the situation with a calm authority that left Sarah tearfully grateful. By chance, they were assigned as roommates, and their bond grew through late-night talks and shared dreams. Sarah's life was a litany of hardship: an alcoholic father who spent rent money on whiskey, a mother who favored her gambling addict brother Tommy, and a brother who saw Sarah as a means to settle his debts. Claire, moved by compassion, had anonymously funded Sarah's tuition, slipping cash through a discreet scholarship fund she'd set up via her family's connections at Larson Jewelers. She'd watched Sarah blossom, her talent for jewelry design shining through sketches of sapphire rings and emerald pendants, each a testament to her grit. By their master's program, Sarah was a campus star, her designs catching the eye of Larson Jewelers, a Chicago-based luxury brand. Claire, now an executive at the company, had pulled strings to ensure Sarah's entry into their prestigious design competition, a gateway to a six-figure job. When Tommy tried to sabotage Sarah by threatening to drag her back home for a forced marriage, Claire had intervened again, paying off his debts to keep him at bay. Sarah's gratitude had been effusive, her hugs tight, her words heartfelt. "Claire, you're my guardian angel." But now Claire saw those words for what they were, empty, a performance to secure her loyalty. The memory of Sarah's later betrayal, seducing Ethan, orchestrating Lily's kidnapping, twisted Claire's stomach. She sipped her coffee, the bitterness mirroring her mood. How had she been so blind? Claire's phone buzzed, and a text from Ethan said that Lily was settled at the boarding school. "Miss you." Her heart clenched. Lily was a bright-eyed toddler in this timeline, safe in a secure Chicago academy. Claire had chosen to shield her from future harm. The decision had been agonizing. Separating from her daughter felt like losing her again, but it was necessary. Claire couldn't risk Sarah or Ethan's influence until her revenge was complete. She typed a curt reply. "Good. Busy today," and pocketed the phone. Ethan's devotion in this life was genuine, but Claire couldn't unsee his future self, standing silent as Sarah destroyed their family. Had he been reborn too, carrying memories of his betrayal? The question gnawed at her, fueling her resolve to test him, to use his love as a weapon. Claire's mind shifted to the competition. She'd already bribed a technician to swap Sarah's USB drive with one containing fabricated photos of Sarah and Tommy designed to ruin her reputation. The plan was cold, calculated, but guilt pricked her. Was this justice, or was she sinking to Sarah's level? She pushed the thought away, focusing on Lily. Every step was for her daughter, to protect and avenge her. Claire stood, tossing her coffee cup into a trash bin more forcefully than needed. Sarah's finals were days away, and Claire would be there not as a friend, but as a specter of retribution. The lake glittered serene and mocking as Claire walked back to campus, her heart a battlefield of love, loss, and vengeance. The Chicago Cultural Center buzzed with anticipation, its grand Tiffany dome casting kaleidoscopic light over the crowd gathered for the Larson Jewelers competition. Claire stood in the audience, her tailored blazer contrasting with the casual students around her. Her eyes were fixed on the stage where Sarah would soon present, but her mind was elsewhere, replaying the horrors of her past life. She'd been a fool, trusting Sarah with her daughter, believing Ethan's vows of love. The memories were a blade cutting deeper with each recollection, and Claire gripped her purse to steady her trembling hands. She wasn't here to cheer, she was here to watch Sarah burn. Claire had been a pillar for Sarah in her previous life, paving her way to success. When Sarah entered the competition, Claire had ensured her designs reached the judges, even thwarting Tommy's attempt to swap her USB drive with a blank one. Sarah had won first place, landing a job at Larson Jewelers with $1 million salary, her ticket out of poverty. Claire had celebrated, proud of her friend's rise, but that pride turned to ash when she entrusted Lily to Sarah during a crisis. Claire's grandmother had fallen ill in London, requiring frequent trips abroad. Worried about her 3-year-old daughter, Claire asked Sarah to watch Lily, believing her friend's love for the girl was genuine. Instead, Sarah used the opportunity to seduce Ethan. During a family trip to Miami, where Sarah coincidentally had a business meeting, Lily caught them together, her innocent eyes witnessing their affair. To silence her, Sarah arranged for Lily's kidnapping, handing her over to a trafficking ring in Southeast Asia. When Claire returned, devastated, and confronted Sarah, she expected remorse. Instead, Sarah's face was a mask of cold defiance. Lily had a heart condition, she'd said, her voice devoid of guilt. She was suffering. I freed her, and now Ethan and I can be together. Isn't that better for everyone? The words had shattered Claire, her grief and fury colliding like a storm. In a blind rage, she'd dragged Sarah to the roof of a skyscraper and leaped, determined to take her betrayer with her. Now reborn, Claire stood in the cultural center, the weight of that moment heavy on her shoulders. Her plan was in motion. The technician she'd bribed would ensure Sarah's presentation displayed scandalous photos, not her designs. But doubt crept in. What if Sarah were reborn, too aware of Claire's schemes? The thought tightened her chest, but she dismissed it. Sarah's oblivious excitement in the dorm suggested otherwise. Still, Claire had to be cautious. She'd already protected Lily, enrolling her in a fortified boarding school, but Ethan was a wild card. His texts were loving, but Claire suspected he might carry reborn memories, his future betrayal lurking beneath his current devotion. She'd test him at the competition, bringing him along to gauge his reactions. Claire's thoughts were interrupted as Sarah took the stage radiant in a simple black dress, her smile dazzling the judges. Claire's heart twisted. Part of her still saw the friend she'd loved, the girl she'd saved. But that girl was gone, replaced by a traitor. As Sarah handed her USB to the staff, Claire's pulse quickened. The screen flickered and Claire braced herself for the chaos to come. She wasn't just avenging Lily, she was reclaiming her life, even if it meant losing pieces of herself. The dome's light shimmered, a cruelly beautiful backdrop to the destruction Claire was about to unleash. The Chicago skyline glowed faintly through the dusk as Claire Thompson pushed open the door to her Lincoln Park apartment, the familiar creak of the hinges jarring against the silence of her thoughts. Inside, Ethan stood in the kitchen, his broad shoulders hunched over a counter dusted with milk powder. He fumbled with a baby bottle, his fingers clumsy as he tried to measure formula for their daughter Lily. The sight of him so earnest, so devoted in this timeline sent a pang through Claire's chest, a cruel reminder of the man she'd once loved. But the memories of her past life overlaid the scene like a dark filter. Ethan's betrayal, his silence as Sarah orchestrated Lily's kidnapping, his cold indifference when their daughter's broken body was found. Claire's hand tightened on the doorknob, her knuckles whitening as she fought the urge to scream. Ethan turned, his face lighting up at her arrival. "Hey, honey, you're back," he said, scratching his head with an awkward grin. Milk powder smudged on his sleeve. His eyes, warm and brown, held a love that felt genuine and suffocating. Claire forced herself to move, crossing the room to snatch the bottle from his hands. "Let me do it," she said, her voice flat, almost mechanical. She washed the bottle, sterilized it, and prepared the formula with practiced ease, her movements precise but devoid of warmth. Ethan hovered nearby, his brow furrowing at her coldness. "Claire, please don't be mad," he pleaded, tugging gently at her sleeve. "I'm trying, I promise." "I'll get the hang of this dad thing." His touch burned not with affection, but with the weight of his future sins. Claire jerked away, her movement sharp, as if he were a contagion she couldn't bear. Ethan froze, his hand suspended in midair, his eyes filling with guilt and confusion. For a moment, Claire's resolve wavered. This Ethan, who stumbled over fatherhood with earnest clumsiness, wasn't the man who'd betrayed her. Could she punish him for crimes he hadn't committed in this life? The question gnawed at her, stirring a flicker of the love she'd once felt, now buried under layers of rage and grief. But Lily's face, her daughter's trusting smile stolen by Sarah's cruelty, flashed in her mind, and Claire's heart hardened. Ethan was a tool in her revenge, nothing more. She turned away, setting the bottle down with a deliberate clink. "It's not about the bottle," she said, her voice low and edged with steel. Ethan's face fell, his shoulders sagging as he sensed the chasm between them. Claire seized the moment, her plan already in motion. "Larson Jewelers is in trouble," she lied. Her eyes meeting his, with calculated vulnerability, a financial crisis. "The company could collapse if we don't find new funds within a week." Her voice cracked, a practiced tremor that masked her true intent. Ethan's eyes widened, his protective instincts kicking in. "How much do you need?" he asked, stepping closer. Claire named a figure exorbitant enough to drain his savings. He vowed, "I'll figure it out," his voice firm despite the panic in his eyes. Claire nodded, her expression softening just enough to keep him hooked. She'd already arranged for a discreet broker to liquidate Ethan's assets, stocks, his car, even his family's cabin in Wisconsin. The money would flow into a dummy account, supposedly for Larson Jewelers, but Claire would redirect it to fund her schemes, including the forged photos for Sarah's USB drive. Ethan's sacrifice would bind him to her, complicating her plans while stripping him of security. but Claire's stomach twisted as he reached for her hand, murmuring, "We'll get through this." Was she destroying a man who might still love her, or was he reborn like she suspected, hiding his own secrets? The uncertainty fueled her resolve. She'd bring him to the competition, test his loyalty, and if he faltered, she'd crush him without mercy. Claire glanced at a framed photo on the counter, Lily giggling in a park, her curls bouncing. She'd enrolled her daughter in a secure Chicago boarding school, its gated campus a fortress against threats like Sarah. The decision had torn at Claire's heart, but it was the only way to keep Lily safe while she waged her war. As Ethan babbled about formula ratios, Claire's mind drifted to the cultural center where Sarah's downfall would begin. She'd protect Lily, avenge her, even if it meant losing herself to vengeance. The apartment felt colder, the distance between her and Ethan, a growing void as Claire steeled herself for the next move. The Chicago Cultural Center loomed ahead, its ornate facade a beacon of prestige under the morning sun. Claire walked arm in arm with Ethan, her heels clicking on the pavement, her tailored coat a shield against the autumn chill and her doubts. The Larson Jewelers competition finals were hours away, and the air buzzed with anticipation as designers, judges, and spectators streamed into the grand hall. Ethan, dressed in a borrowed suit, glanced at Claire nervously. "You sure you want me here?" he asked, his voice tinged with unease. "I'm not a jewelry guy." Claire forced a smile, her hand tightening on his arm. "You're here for me," she said, her tone warm but laced with intent, besides Sarah's counting on my support. The lie tasted bitter, but it served her purpose. Ethan's presence was a test, a chance to gauge his loyalty and probe for signs of reborn memories. Inside the hall sparkled under the Tiffany dome, its stained glass casting colorful patterns across the marble floor. Claire's heart raced, not with excitement, but with the cold precision of her plan. She'd spent days orchestrating Sarah's ruin, bribing a technician named Rico with $10,000 to swap Sarah's USB drive with one containing fabricated photos of her and Tommy in compromising poses. The images, crafted by a forger in Pilsen, were convincing enough to fool the audience, but vague enough to let Tommy take the blame. Claire had also ensured the venue's security cameras were malfunctioning, a favor secured through a contact at Larson Jewelers. Every detail was meticulous, designed to shatter Sarah's reputation without leaving a trace back to Claire. As they approached the backstage lounge, Claire spotted Tommy slinking out, his hoodie pulled low, a USB drive clutched in his hand. His eyes darted nervously, and Claire's pulse quickened. Here was the pawn she'd counted on. Before Ethan could react, Tommy bumped into Claire, his shoulder jarring hers. He muttered a curse, head down, and tried to bolt. Ethan, ever protective, grabbed his arm. "Hey, you hit her! Apologize," he growled, his grip firm. Tommy squirmed, his face pale under the hood. Claire seized the moment, her voice calm but deliberate. "Wait, aren't you Sarah's brother? Did she send you to grab something?" Tommy froze, confusion flickering in his eyes, but he caught her cue. "Yeah. Sarah needed me to pick up her stuff," he stammered, playing along. Claire smiled, her expression disarming. "Better hurry then. Take the side exit, less crowded." She gently pried Ethan's hand from Tommy's arm, guiding him away from confrontation. Tommy muttered a thanks and vanished down the hall, the USB swap complete. Ethan frowned, his eyes narrowing. "You know that guy?" he asked, suspicion creeping into his tone. Claire shrugged her face, a mask of innocence. "Just helping Sarah out? You know how her family is?" Ethan nodded, but his gaze lingered, a hint of doubt that made Claire's stomach twist. Was he reborn, sensing her deception? She pushed the thought aside, steering him toward their seats. "Let's find our spot," she said, her voice light but her mind racing. As they settled in, Claire's thoughts turned to Lily, safe at her boarding school. She'd called the headmistress that morning, confirming the campus's security protocols, cameras, guards, locked gates. Lily was untouchable, but the distance ached, a reminder of the sacrifices Claire's revenge demanded. She glanced at Ethan, his profile sharp under the dome's light, and wondered if he'd betray her again. Her plan hinged on his trust, but her heart wavered, torn between her loved husband and the traitor she'd known. Sarah's presentation was next, and with it the first blow of Claire's vengeance. The hall hushed, the screen flickered, and Claire braced herself, her soul a tightrope between justice and ruin. The Chicago Cultural Center's grand hall hummed with anticipation, the Tiffany dome above casting a mosaic of colors across the polished marble floor. Claire Thompson sat beside Ethan, her posture rigid, her eyes fixed on the stage where Sarah stood radiant in a sleek black dress. The Larson Jewelers competition finals were in full swing, and Sarah, the crowd's darling, was about to present her designs. Her confident smile, which had once charmed Claire into trust, now fueled her resolve for vengeance. Claire's hand rested lightly on Ethan's, a calculated gesture to keep him anchored, but her mind was elsewhere, racing with the precision of her plan. The USB drive Sarah had handed to the staff, swapped by her brother Tommy, thanks to Claire's subtle nudge, contained not her designs, but forged photos to ruin her. Claire's heart pounded a mix of anticipation and dread as the screen behind Sarah flickered to life. Sarah stepped to the podium, her voice clear and poised. "My design theme is forbidden love." Inspired by the tragic passion of Oedipus, she began, her words flowing with rehearsed grace. The audience leaned forward, captivated by her charisma. Claire's lips twitched, a ghost of a smile, as she waited for her scheme to unfold. She'd paid Rico, the technician, $10,000 to ensure the swap, and the forger in Pilsen had crafted images so scandalous, Sarah and Tommy in compromising poses, that no one would question their authenticity. The cameras disabled by Claire's insider at Larson Jewelers would offer no evidence to contradict the narrative. It was perfect, yet a flicker of unease stirred in Claire's chest. Was this justice, or was she crossing a line she couldn't return from? The screen flashed, and a collective gasp ripped through the hall. Instead of intricate jewelry sketches, explicit photos of Sarah and Tommy filled the display, their faces unmistakable despite the artful blur. The crowd erupted in shocked murmurs, whispers of disgust and disbelief cutting through the air. Sarah's confident facade shattered. Her knees buckled and she collapsed to the stage, her face drained of color. "No, no, this isn't right," she cried, her voice cracking as she spun to face the screen, her eyes wide with horror. The judges froze their pens, hovering over scorecards, while spectators pulled out phones, capturing the scandal. Claire watched, her expression a mask of concern, but a dark satisfaction bloomed inside. Sarah's perfect image, her ticket to Larson Jewelers, was crumbling. Ethan shifted beside her, his hand tensing under hers. "What the hell is this?" he muttered, his voice low but sharp. Claire squeezed his hand, her tone soft. "I don't know, Ethan. Something must have gone wrong." Her words were a lie, but her concern was half genuine, a remnant of the friend she'd once been. Ethan's brow furrowed, his gaze darting between Sarah and Claire, a flicker of suspicion in his eyes. Claire's heart skipped. Was he reborn, sensing her hand in this? She'd suspected it since their encounter with Tommy. His questions too pointed, his doubt too keen. She pushed the thought aside, focusing on the chaos unfolding. Sarah scrambled to her feet, shouting at the staff to stop the presentation, but the damage was done. The photos looped, each frame a nail in her reputation's coffin. Claire stood, pulling Ethan toward the stage, her face a picture of worry. "We need to help her," she said, loud enough for nearby spectators to hear. As they approached, Sarah's eyes locked onto Claire, wild with panic and rage. The crowd parted, their whispers a venomous chorus, branding Sarah a fraud, a scandal. Claire's plan had worked flawlessly, but guilt pricked her. She'd protected Lily, her daughter, by enrolling her in a secure boarding school, but at what cost to her own soul? As she reached the stage, Sarah's trembling figure contrasted with her former poise, and Claire steeled herself. This was only the beginning. Sarah's fall would be total, and Ethan's loyalty would be tested next. Backstage at the Cultural Center, the air was thick with tension, the muffled roar of the crowd seeping through the heavy curtains. Sarah sat crumpled on a folding chair, her face buried in her hands, her black dress wrinkled from her collapse on stage. Claire stood nearby, her arms crossed, her expression a careful blend of concern and detachment. Ethan hovered awkwardly, his eyes darting between the two women, his earlier suspicion now a quiet unease. The explicit photos of Sarah and Tommy still lingered in the minds of everyone present, the scandal spreading like wildfire across social media. Claire had orchestrated it all, the USB swap, the disabled cameras, the forged images, but her face betrayed nothing, a perfect mask honed by years of betrayal. Sarah's head snapped up, her eyes bloodshot and blazing. "You did this, Claire," she hissed, lunging from the chair and grabbing Claire's arm. Her nails dug into Claire's skin, drawing pinpricks of blood. "You're the only one who's seen my USB. You framed me." Her voice was a raw scream echoing in the cramped lounge. Claire winced, the pain sharp, but she didn't pull away immediately. Instead, she met Sarah's gaze, her eyes cold and unyielding. "Why would I do that, Sarah?" she asked, her tone icy. "What's so special about you? Your deadbeat family, Your fragile ego. The words struck like a whip, hitting Sarah's deepest insecurities, her impoverished roots, her desperate need for validation. Sarah's grip faltered, her face twisting with shame and fury. She glanced at the blood on Claire's arm. Her nails work and a flicker of regret crossed her features. "I'm sorry," she stammered, her voice breaking. This competition was everything. Someone swapped my USB and I thought." She trailed off, eyes searching Claire's for a hint of betrayal. Claire seized the moment, softening her expression. "I get it, Sarah. You're upset. Let me help." She gestured to a staff member requesting an investigation into the lounge's security. "Check the cameras," she said, knowing full well Rico had ensured they were offline. The staff member returned apologetic. He said the cameras were down for maintenance, avoiding Sarah's gaze. Sarah's face crumpled, her last hope snuffed out. She whispered, "This can't be happening," sinking back into the chair. Ethan stepped forward, his voice tentative. "Claire, you saw Tommy earlier. Shouldn't we tell her?" Claire shot him a sharp look, silencing him. "It's not our place," she said, her tone final. Ethan's jaw tightened, his eyes searching hers, and Claire's heart raced. His persistence hinted at more than concern, perhaps reborn memories, a knowledge of his past life betrayal. She couldn't afford his interference, not now. "Let's get you some water," she said to Sarah, handing her a cup, her movements deliberate to keep Ethan at bay. As Sarah sipped the water, her hands trembling, Claire's mind churned. She'd protected Lily, her daughter, with the boarding school's ironclad security guards, biometric locks, and constant monitoring. But orchestrating Sarah's public humiliation had taken a toll. Claire's arms stung where Sarah's nails had dug in, a physical reminder of her friend's desperation and her own ruthlessness. Was she becoming the villain of this story? The thought gnawed at her, but Lily's memory, her daughter's trusting smile stolen by Sarah's cruelty, drove her forward. She'd ensured the photos pinned the blame on Tommy, whose gambling debts made him a plausible culprit. The online storm was already raging, with hashtags like #Northwestern Scandal trending, sealing Sarah's disgrace. Sarah looked up, her eyes pleading. "Claire, you believe me, right? Someone set me up." Claire knelt beside her, her voice gentle but laced with steel. "Of course, Sarah. We'll find out who did this." The lie was effortless, but inside Claire's heart wavered. She'd loved Sarah, once seen her as a sister. Now she was dismantling her life piece by piece. Ethan watched his silence heavy, and Claire knew she'd have to confront his suspicions soon. The backstage lounge felt like a pressure cooker, Sarah's despair and Ethan's doubt pressing against Claire's resolve. She stood, brushing off her skirt. "Rest here," she told Sarah. "I'll handle things." As she walked away, her steps firm, Claire knew this was only the first blow. Sarah's true reckoning was yet to come, and Ethan's loyalty hung in the balance. The Northwestern University campus was a storm of whispers, the autumn air thick with scandal as students clustered around their phones, scrolling through viral posts about Sarah's disgrace at the Larson Jewelers competition. Claire Thompson stood outside the dorms, her breath visible in the chilly Chicago morning, her eyes scanning the crowd. The explicit photos of Sarah and her brother Tommy, though fabricated, had spread like wildfire, with hashtags like #Northwestern Scandal and #Jewelry Fraud dominating social media. Claire's plan had worked. Sarah's reputation was in tatters, her dream of a glittering career at Larson Jewelers shattered. Yet, as Claire watched a group of students snicker over a meme mocking Sarah, a flicker of unease stirred in her chest. She'd orchestrated this public crucifixion, but the weight of her actions pressed against her, a reminder of the friend she'd once cherished. Sarah had locked herself in their dorm, refusing to face the judgmental stares, but her brother Tommy had no such restraint. He stood in the quad, a megaphone in hand, his voice booming across the campus. "Sarah, you owe us," he shouted, his face flushed with desperation and malice. "We took you in, fed you, and what do? Run off to college, seduce me out of our family's money, and ditch us for 7 years?" The lies were grotesque, painting Sarah as a manipulative traitor who'd abandoned her family for ambition. The crowd ate it up, their phones, recording every word, fueling the online frenzy. Claire watched from a distance, her expression neutral, but a dark satisfaction coiled inside. She'd paid Tommy a hefty sum, funneled through a discreet contact to spread these lies, ensuring Sarah's humiliation was complete. Sarah emerged from the dorm, her face pale, her eyes wild with fury. "Tommy, stop it!" she screamed, rushing toward him. "We're siblings! You're lying!" She lunged for the megaphone, but Tommy dodged his sneer, vicious. "Siblings? Then why'd you try to marry me off to Hank to pay my debts?" He taunted, referencing the loan shark who'd threatened to break his bones over unpaid gambling debts. The crowd gasped murmurs, turning venomous, cementing Sarah's image as a morally bankrupt fraud. Claire's lips twitched. She'd known Tommy's greed would make him the perfect pawn, his betrayal of his sister as ruthless as hers. Sarah's knees buckled, and she sank to the grass, her hands clutching her face as tears streamed down. Claire approached her steps, measured her face a mask of concern. "Sarah, let's get you out of here," she said loud enough for the onlookers to hear. She helped Sarah to her feet, guiding her away from the crowd, her touch gentle but calculated. Sarah clung to her, sobbing. "It was Tommy," she choked out. "He swapped my USB to force me back home to marry that creep Hank to clear his debts. I never thought he'd go this far." Her voice was raw, her despair genuine, and Claire's heart wavered for a moment. She remembered their late-night talks and Sarah's dreams of escaping her toxic family. But the memory of Lily, her daughter kidnapped and lost because of Sarah's cruelty, snuffed out any pity. "I'll help you," Claire said, her voice soft but laced with steel. "The Drake Hotel has tight security. You can stay there away from Tommy." Sarah nodded, her eyes glassy with gratitude. "You're the only one I can trust, Claire," she whispered. The words stung a cruel echo of their past friendship. Claire had already arranged a suite at the Drake paid for, with Ethan's liquidated assets setting the stage for her next move. As they drove to the hotel, Claire glanced at her phone, a message from Ethan. "Where are you worried?" His concern felt genuine, but Claire's suspicion lingered. Was he reborn, hiding his secrets? She'd test him soon at the Drake. For now, she focused on Sarah, her pawn in a game of vengeance, unaware of the trap closing around her. Claire's thoughts drifted to Lily, safe in her fortified boarding school, its biometric locks, and round-the-clock guards a shield against any threat. The distance from her daughter ached, but it was necessary to protect her while Claire dismantled her enemies. As they pulled up to the Drake's elegant entrance, Sarah leaned against Claire's shoulder, her voice trembling. "Thank you, Claire. You're my rock." Claire forced a smile, her heart a battlefield of guilt and resolve. She was saving Sarah only to destroy her, and the cost of that choice was carving deeper into her soul. The Drake Hotel's opulent lobby glowed under crystal chandeliers, its marble floors reflecting the soft light, as Claire led Sarah to the presidential suite. Still shaken from Tommy's public betrayal, Sarah clung to Claire's arm, her eyes darting nervously. "I feel safe here," she murmured, her voice fragile. Claire nodded, her expression warm but her mind cold, calculating the next step in her revenge. She'd arranged this haven not out of kindness, but as a stage for Sarah's final fall. Tonight she'd ensure Sarah and Ethan were caught in a compromising position, their betrayal exposed to a swarm of reporters she'd tipped off. The thought sent a chill through her, not of fear, but of the moral line she was crossing. Could she live with the person she was becoming? Claire settled Sarah into the suite, its plush furnishings contrasting with the storm brewing outside. "Rest here," she told Sarah, handing her a glass of water. "I'll handle Tommy and the media." Sarah nodded, her gratitude palpable, unaware that Claire had orchestrated every detail: Tommy's lies, the hotel's isolation, the reporters on standby. As Sarah sank onto the bed, Claire stepped out, her phone buzzing with a text from Ethan. "At the Cultural Center." "Where are you?" she replied. "Drake Hotel Rooftop Restaurant. Come now." Her fingers hesitated, a flicker of doubt surfacing. Ethan's devotion in this timeline was genuine, but his past life betrayal standing by as Sarah kidnapped Lily loomed large. Was he reborn, playing innocent? She'd know tonight. At the rooftop restaurant, Claire sat by a window overlooking Lake Michigan, the city's lights a glittering backdrop to her plan. Ethan arrived, his face lighting up with relief. "Claire, you've been dodging me," he said, sliding into the seat across from her. His suit was rumpled, his eyes tired but warm. Claire forced a smile, pouring him a glass of red wine. "Just busy," she said, her voice light but her gaze sharp, searching for signs of reborn memories. She kept the wine flowing, each glass loosening Ethan's guard. The servers tipped generously, brought dish after dish, culminating in a bamboo stand with flickering white candles. Ethan frowned, confused. "What's with the candles?" he asked, his words slurring slightly. Claire stared into the flames, her mind flashing to Lily's broken body, recovered by the police in her past life. The image seared her, and she gripped her glass tighter. "A candlelit dinner," she said, her voice soft but heavy. "Ethan, if someone hurt Lily, what would you do?" His fist slammed the table, rattling the plates. "I'd tear them apart," he growled, his eyes blazing. Claire's heart skipped. His passion felt real, but could she trust it? She leaned closer, her voice a whisper. "Good. Remember that." As Ethan drank more, his head lolled, and Claire signaled the hotel manager who'd been paid to slip Ethan into Sarah's suite. The manager nodded, guiding the drunken Ethan away. The next morning, Claire stood outside the suite, a horde of reporters behind her, their cameras ready. She'd tipped them off anonymously, ensuring they'd catch Sarah and Ethan together. Pushing open the door, she found Sarah sitting on the bed, her face flushed with shock and a fleeting joy as she looked at Ethan, who was waking his shirt half unbuttoned. Red marks dotted Sarah's collarbone, evidence of a night Claire had engineered. Ethan's eyes widened, panic setting in. "Claire, this isn't," he started, but Claire cut him off, her voice trembling with rehearsed fury. "You slept with my best friend," she cried, her slap across Sarah's face sharp and resounding. Sarah clutched her cheek, stunned. "You set me up," she gasped, but the reporters surged in their flashes, blinding. Claire's performance was flawless, her eyes shining with the pain of betrayal, but inside her heart fractured. She'd loved Ethan once, and a part of her still did. Was he reborn, aware of his past sins, or just a pawn in her trap? Sarah's accusations echoed her doubts, but Claire pressed on, storming out as the media swarmed Sarah. Lily was safe, her boarding school a fortress, but Claire's soul was eroding each act of vengeance, carving away a piece of who she'd been. As she stepped into the elevator, the reporter's shouts fading, she caught her reflection cold, resolute but haunted. Sarah's ruin was nearly complete, but Ethan's test was far from over. The sterile scent of antiseptic hung heavy in the Chicago hospital room, its fluorescent lights casting harsh shadows on Sarah's pale face. She lay in the bed, bandages wrapped around her wrists, her eyes sunken from her failed suicide attempt. Claire Thompson stood at the foot of the bed, her tailored coat contrasting with the clinical setting, her expression unreadable. Sarah's leap from a Northwestern dorm window, broken only by a canopy below, had been the desperate act of a woman whose dreams, graduation, a career with Larson Jewelers, a life beyond her toxic family, had been obliterated. The scandalous photos at the competition, Tommy's public lies, and the hotel setup with Ethan had stripped Sarah of everything. Claire had orchestrated it all, yet a crack formed in her resolve as she looked at Sarah's frail form. Had she gone too far, or not far enough? Sarah's eyes snapped open, locking onto Claire with raw hatred. "You," she hissed, her voice hoarse but venomous. "I know it was you, Claire. You swapped the USB, paid Tommy to lie, and set me up with Ethan. I'm reborn too, and I remember everything." Her words hit like a thunderbolt, confirming Claire's worst fear. Sarah carried memories of their past life, the skyscraper fall, and her own betrayal. Claire's heart raced, but she kept her face cold, unyielding. "So you remember," she said, stepping closer, her voice low. "You seduced Ethan, kidnapped my daughter Lily, and sent her to die in a trafficking ring. You justified it, said she was better off dead. This is justice, Sarah." Sarah's face twisted, a mix of guilt and defiance. "I was wrong about Lily," she admitted, her voice cracking. "But you're no saint. You've destroyed me, Claire. And for what? Revenge." Her eyes searched Claire's, seeking a shred of the friend she'd known. Claire's chest tightened. Memories of their laughter and shared dreams flickered like a dying flame. She'd funded Sarah's education, saved her from her family, and loved her like a sister. But Lily's loss, the image of her daughter's broken body, drowned out the past. "You killed my child," Claire said, her voice trembling with 2 lifetimes of grief. "I paid Rico to swap your USB with those photos, bribed Tommy to spread those lies, and arranged the hotel to catch you with Ethan. You're right, I did it all, and I'd do it again." Sarah's eyes widened, her breath hitching, as Claire's confession laid bare her schemes. The USB swap, the forged photos from Pilsen, the disabled cameras, the reporters at the Drake, all meticulously planned to pin the blame on Tommy while ruining Sarah. Claire had used Ethan's liquidated assets to fund it, ensuring his complicity without his knowledge. Sarah tried to sit up, her bandages straining. "Ethan's reborn too," she spat. "He'll see through you. He'll save me." Claire's blood ran cold. Ethan's reborn status, suspected since his pointed questions at the competition, was now confirmed. The realization sharpened her focus. She'd deal with him next. Claire leaned closer, her voice a chilling whisper. "Ethan won't save you. I've made sure of that." She straightened, her eyes glinting. "Lily's safe now in a boarding school with biometric locks, guards, and cameras. You'll never touch her again." The mention of Lily steadied Claire, grounding her purpose. She'd enrolled her daughter in the fortress-like academy to shield her from Sarah's reach, a painful but necessary sacrifice. Sarah's face crumpled, her hatred giving way to despair. "Get out!" she screamed, her voice breaking. Claire turned her steps deliberate, but inside her soul ached. She'd won this round, but the cost was etched in her heart. A friend destroyed, a piece of herself lost. As Claire left the hospital, her phone buzzed with a message from the school. Lily's thriving, drawing pictures for you. A rare smile touched Claire's lips, but faded as she thought of Ethan. His reborn memories meant he might know about his past betrayal and his silence as Lily was taken. Claire's next move would be her cruelest, and the weight of it pressed against her. She'd protect Lily at all costs, but could she live with the darkness she embraced? The Chicago skyline loomed outside its lights, cold and unyielding, mirroring Claire's chosen path. The Chicago River glittered under the moonlight, its surface mirroring the city's restless pulse. Claire Thompson stood on the Michigan Avenue Bridge, her coat flapping in the wind, her eyes fixed on the water below. 2 weeks had passed since Sarah's hospital confrontation, and Claire's final act of vengeance was complete. Sarah, sent back to her Southside hometown on a private jet funded by Claire, had been delivered to her brother Tommy and his loan shark Hank. The marriage Tommy forced on Sarah was a brutal trap. Hank's beatings came like clockwork, a hell Claire had ensured by paying Tommy to seal the deal. Sarah's life, once poised for glory, was now a cycle of pain, her reborn memories only deepening her despair. Claire's plan had succeeded, but the victory tasted like ash. Ethan's downfall had been swifter, more personal. Claire had dismantled his life with surgical precision, using his liquidated assets to fund her schemes while exposing his reborn memories. She'd confronted him in their apartment, her voice cold as she laid out his past life betrayal, his affair with Sarah, his silence as Lily was kidnapped, his indifference when their daughter's body was found. You knew, Claire had accused, her eyes boring into his. Ethan's face had crumpled, his confessions spilling out. I'm reborn, Claire. I remember everything. I was weak, scared. I'm sorry. His tears had done nothing to soften her. She'd leaked his financial ruin to his colleagues, estranged him from friends, and ensured his architectural career collapsed. Broken Ethan had attempted suicide, slashing his wrists in their bathroom. He'd been found too late, his body still in the hospital morgue. Standing on the bridge, Claire replayed her final visit to Ethan. He'd lain in the ICU, a ventilator mask over his face, his eyes flickering with regret. I'm sorry, he'd whispered, his voice barely audible. Claire had stood silent, her heart a tangle of love and hatred. She'd loved him once, built a life with him, dreamed of a future with Lily. But his betrayal, reborn or not, was unforgivable. His chest had heaved, his legs jerked, and he'd died, his eyes wide with unfulfilled remorse. Claire had turned away, her face a mask, but inside a small part of her mourned the man he'd been. The cost of her vengeance was clear now. Sarah and Ethan were destroyed, but Claire's soul was scarred, her heart hollow. Lily was her anchor. The boarding school's reports were glowing. Lily was painting, laughing safe behind biometric locks and armed guards. Claire visited weekly, and her daughter's hugs were a lifeline, but their distance ached. She'd protected Lily and avenged her, but at what price? Claire's reflection in the river showed a woman hardened by revenge, her eyes shadowed with guilt. She'd paid Tommy to betray Sarah, bribed Rico for the USB swap, tipped off reporters at the Drake, each act a step deeper into darkness. Sarah's reborn memories had made her suffering sharper, a twisted justice Claire had engineered. Ethan's death, though, was a wound she hadn't anticipated, his apology a crack in her armor. Claire's phone buzzed, a photo from Lily, a colorful drawing of a family, 3 stick figures holding hands. Claire's throat tightened. She'd saved her daughter, but the family they'd been was gone, shattered by her own hands as much as by Sarah and Ethan's betrayals. The wind whipped her hair, and she gripped the bridge's railing, the cold metal grounding her. She'd won, but the victory was hollow, a Pyrrhic triumph that left her alone with her scars. As the city pulsed around her, Claire vowed to rebuild, to be the mother Lily deserved, even if redemption was beyond her reach. The river flowed on indifferent, carrying her reflection into the night.